And now we're talking about Chicago. We're talking about New York City. Neither one of those cities are in the top 10 for most violent cities in America. And if you want to look per capita, they need to do no more than look to Mike Johnson's home state, the Speaker of the House, and look at violence per capita. You have a much higher chance of dying in Monroe, Louisiana, than you do Chicago, Illinois. A much higher chance of dying in Shreveport, Louisiana, than you do in Monroe. A much higher chance of dying in New Orleans, Louisiana, than you do in New York City. Cities and towns in red state America, and you will see violent crime rates much higher per capita than Chicago, Illinois.
That was our good friend Joe Scarborough and his lovely wife, Mika Bazooka. Which, by the way, why does Mika always look bitter? Why does she always look angry? I guess if I woke up every morning next to John Scarborough and I knew I had to spend hours in the toxic dump known as MSNBC or MS Now, whatever the hell they're calling it, if I worked at this toxic dump, I guess I would be pissed off too. But I just never see Mika Bazooka smile. I don't smile a lot because I work at MSNBC. My colleagues think women have masculinity. Anyway, that clip was John Scarborough last week downplaying the rampant crime problem in Chicago while also claiming that crime is worse in southern cities and states. Why are we sending the National Guard to Chicago? The crime is significantly worse in the bayou. White men are killing the animals. They're killing Bambi. Call up the troops. We need to save Mufasa. Last week, Joe Scarborough was claiming that Republican states are plagued with violence. He was downplaying crime in woke cities and insinuating that the real problem was down here in the South. He used New Orleans as an example, which proves that John Scarborough has no idea what the hell he's talking about. This is another case of the mainstream media giving you a partial truth or the shit sandwich. Yes, there is obviously a crime problem in New Orleans, but since 2018, the mayor of New Orleans is LaToya Cantrell, or as the locals prefer to call her, LaToya the Destroyer. She was given that nickname because, like everyone else infected with the woke fungus, LaToya destroys everything she touches. LaToya Cantrell is a proud deacon at Woke United Methodist. Last month, she was indicted by a federal grand jury. Wire fraud, obstruction of justice, along with charges of lying to the federal grand jury. I would imagine that it's hard to fight crime in New Orleans when the mayor is contributing to the problem. Last week, John Scarborough was trying to convince us that crime was a real problem in red states. Crime in Chicago, crime in New York City. That's no big deal. New York City is safe. We need to be fighting crime in Alabama. That's where all the guns are. 1 week later, Joe Scarborough's outlook has completely changed. All it took was a violent Labor Day weekend in Chicago. Well, let me correct that. All it took was another violent weekend in Chicago. Doesn't matter if it's Labor Day, Arbor Day, Safe Space Day, Leave Your Gun at Home Day, Monday, Tuesday. The day doesn't matter. You're pretty much guaranteed to have violence in Chicago. It's been that way for years, maybe even decades. But all of a sudden, John Scarborough has been enlightened. He is suddenly committed to fighting crime in Chicago, and he's willing to make drastic suggestions to solve the problem. Question is why? Why this sudden change? Maybe, just maybe, It's a desperate attempt to appeal to normal people, hoping we will pick up the scooper and get his ratings out of the pooper. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. Today on the second channel, going to be talking about this horrific press conference with the assistant general manager of the Cleveland Browns. The assistant GM in Cleveland is a woman named Catherine Hickman. Now, some are claiming that she was a DEI hire. Some are claiming that her marginalized status as a white female is the reason she was given this job. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but after watching this press conference, it is entirely possible that diversity and inclusion were the focal points of her resume. So if you haven't already, click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. According to Illinois Governor J. Robert Pritzker, who prefers to be called JB, it looks like the initials should be JR, but in this age of the identifier, I guess if he wants to be called JB, that's okay. If I were Jay, I would be calling my doctor and asking for Ozempic. But according to the Illinois governor, crime is getting better in Chicago. Let me give you some of these stats. You tell me if crime is getting better in Chicago. 233 days into 2025, there were 254 homicides in Chicago. Now, I'm no expert in math, but that seems to be about one a day. This past weekend, when you were hanging out at the beach with your family or watching your kids play in the pool, if you're a dump diver in the WNBA, you probably spent the weekend pretending to play basketball while ducking high-profile projectile wieners. What were the good people of Chicago doing? They were ducking bullets. Over the course of 3 days, 8 people lost their lives in Chicago. 50 were wounded. There were dozens of shootings. But according to J.B. Pritzker and his pretend friends in the mainstream media, Chicago's doing great. Yesterday morning, Joe Scarborough and Mika Bazooka, they returned from their Labor Day weekend. Who knows? Maybe they spent another romantic weekend at Mar-a-Lago with the Trumper. Something must have happened over the weekend because Joe Scarborough completely changed his outlook. Instead of focusing on crime in red states, which, when compared to Chicago, crime in red states is damn near non-existent. Instead of focusing on the Republican states, Joe Scarborough pressured J.B. Pritzker to call Donnie Trump and invite the National Guard to Chicago. Watch for yourself.
But, we had the mayor of Chicago on last week saying, oh, we don't need any more police officers. Police officers aren't the answer. No police officers. I think he said no 5 times. You look what's happening this weekend. You look so, I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president. Right now, hey, nothing to see here moving along. No problem here. Hey, Donald Trump, we don't need you. And, the mayor talking about we're going to protect people's dignity in our city. We'll protect their lives.
Obviously, Joe Scarborough is right. Crime has been rampant in Chicago for years, and their useless woke politicians, they refuse to do anything about it. And it's strange, because most people affected are minorities. Of the 254 homicides in Chicago this year, 80% of the victims were black. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I thought deacons at Woke United Methodist and their pretend friends in the media, I thought they were committed to fighting mythical racism. Remember when their object of worship, George Floyd, lost his life? The media covered the story for months. There were riots in the streets. How come we're not seeing the same response with crime in Chicago? And how come MSNBC is suddenly making sense? Why is Joe Scarborough suddenly suggesting that the Trumpers send the National Guard to Chicago to clean up the crime? This is the same network that believes Orange Man bad. This is the same network that automatically disagrees with everything Donald Trump does. If the Trumper feeds starving children in New Orleans, the media calls him racist because he gave them fried chicken. If the Trumper were to give away free health insurance, MSNBC would complain about the quality of coverage. Whatever Donald Trump does, MSNBC will find a way to demonize him. So why is John Scarborough suddenly suggesting that the Trumper send the National Guard to Chicago? Maybe John Scarborough is realizing he cannot survive by catering to a dwindling woke audience. 2 years ago, The Morning John averaged 973,000 viewers, 112,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. Last summer, The Morning Pooper was consistently eclipsing 1 million viewers. After the election, ratings at CNN and MSNBC drastically declined. But for John Scarborough, the decline was significantly worse. Once the Trumper won the election, John and Mika, they spent a weekend at Mar-a-Lago fraternizing with the enemy. When they returned Monday morning, they shared their experience with the Trumper with their audience. Naturally, the lonely male wanker spankers in their audience, they were pissed. They felt betrayed. Ever since then, ratings for The Morning John have literally been in the John. Matter of fact, ratings are damn near impossible to find. It's like the WNBA, where they hide ratings they don't want us to see. Since November, MSNBC has published one set of ratings for The Morning John. On April 16th of this year, they drew 690,000 viewers with only 60,000 in the demo. If I had to guess, that's probably their new average, which is why MSNBC isn't releasing their ratings. You can find Rachel Maddow, you can find Jen Psaki. But good luck finding ratings for The Morning John because they don't exist. Now you gotta remember, MSNBC is under new management. They have split from NBC Universal. MSNBC is now operating under new leadership. Oftentimes, what is one of the first things that new leaders do? They make changes. What's one of the easiest ways to make changes? You get rid of underperforming shows and replace them with something else. So maybe this is why we're seeing this new and improved John Scarborough. A couple of weeks ago, I shared that clip with you guys of John Scarborough humiliating Chicago's mayor. Maybe John is trying to appeal to normal people in a desperate attempt to draw ratings and potentially save his own job. I don't know. You tell me. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.